Hey, what up, y'all? Welcome back off the bench. T-Bob, Jake, Musso, and Danny hanging out with you right now. I love it every Tuesday. I'm so glad that our CST listeners next week will get to hear this man as well. We're talking about Nick Underhill, Nick_Underhill, New Orleans football. The content is so right now on New Orleans football. If you're a New Orleans Saints fan, if you want to know about Jameis Winston, what he could potentially change in order to succeed. If you want draft simulations about how the Saints could address their needs, if you want kind of a rundown on free agency needs, the breakdowns of new signings, all of it is on there. New Orleans football. Sign up today. It's support Nick directly. It's so worth it. Nick, what's up, dude?
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're doing very well, Nick. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I want to start. Let's just start with the recent signing. So the Saints sign Tanoah Kpassagnon. What can you tell us about? How does he fit into the kind of overall blueprint of this next portion of the offseason?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you said his name because I wasn't sure about the pronunciation. I was a little nervous about it coming on here.
I looked it up online yesterday, so it's easy to it's like pass, the letter N, and then yo. If we're just talking phonetic pronunciation, Kpassagnon.
All right, we'll go with that. I like the signing for them just in the sense mostly that it plugs a hole for them. And I felt maybe, at some point in the first 3 rounds, they would have had to have drafted a pass rusher, and getting him takes away that need. And, when you go through these draft simulations and, you let the computer run everything so you're not kind of cooking up the results, it's hard to address all their outstanding needs right now and get to the end of the draft and feel good about what you did without being like, man, there's a glaring hole here, there's a glaring hole there. So everyone they can patch, I think is going to help out a lot. And look, he might not be the type of guy that you sign and you say, wow, this changes the defense or anything like that. But it is that middle class that, we continue to talk about. If you fill that out, you have that depth, you're going to be a better team, and those players are important. And it gives them another rotational defensive end. And that player historically has gotten a good amount of snaps in this defense and had good production. Trey Hendrickson, was the 3rd guy last year. And now it's going to be Carl Granderson or Kpassagnon competing for that spot. But, I like the things he can do. He's versatile. He can rush off of both edges. He can move inside. I think he was actually a better interior rusher than on the outside in passing situations. So, there might be a little bit of, overlap in what he can do in replacing Sheldon Rankins as well. So it's a 2-for-1 player in some respects. He doesn't cost a whole lot of money. I do think there's still a little bit of upside there. And he is someone they like coming out of the draft in 2017. They worked him out. Ryan Nielsen visited with him privately to put him through a workout. So, they've kind of had their eye on him for a while. So the fact that they still like what he can do, it seems to suggest that they believe that there's some potential there that they can tap into, and maybe he can do a little bit more. But, overall, it's just solid depth signing. It adds to that class, and it allows them to have a little bit more versatility in the draft.
And it's funny, Nick, we were talking about maybe what we thought the Saints' biggest needs were going into the draft. And for us, we kind of talked about corner, some D-line, I guess, interior and exterior. Kpassagnon helps in that regard. What do you think when you look at the upcoming draft and you look at the Saints' needs and what are they? Like, where should they be aiming?
Cornerback. It kind of just feels like that's the one thing they have to do. That situation probably got a little bit worse this week with Marshawn Lattimore getting arrested, alleged to have a stolen gun in his possession. We'll see how that plays out. That gun, I guess, I don't know, it was stolen like 3 years ago. So, I don't know how that's going to play out, what the legal proceedings will be. But there is also, the specter of league punishment. And there doesn't always have to be, charges or a conviction for that stuff to come through. So just the uncertainty of that, even if it does end up on the right side of things, looking at it right now, I mean, you could potentially have 2 holes at cornerback for, some period of time, even if it's just a couple of weeks. But even without it, I think that's a huge need for them. TJ Carey came in. He didn't sign yet. We'll see, how that plays out. But they have to get somebody there. You let Janoris Jenkins go. It feels like there was a plan there to replace him in some respects. Otherwise, you wouldn't do that. But now the Lattimore thing's up in the air. It's a tough situation. And that's the position for me. Everything else can go. If you don't address cornerback, that's the one where I start looking at the win total at the end of the player acquisition period. And I start docking them if they don't fill those holes. So they got to get somebody in there to take care of that. That's number one, like, far and away. I feel better about tight end with Nick Bennett coming in. I think, he talked yesterday about how he feels like he can do more as a pass catcher. Even if he doesn't, just getting him as that blocker kind of in that Josh Hill role. Adam Troutman's freed up. He can kind of do what he does. I think that takes care of that pretty well. I still think pass rushers a need. Kpassagnon helps that, but I don't think he changes your fortunes at that position. And I'm just kind of a little bit uneasy with Marcus Davenport too after the year he just had. So unless there's a guarantee that he's going to be better, that kind of still feels like it's a little bit up in the air and it could be bolstered a little bit better. Other than that, I think it's linebacker. I'd put linebacker as my next one. I feel like they need to get somebody else next to Demario Davis. Demario's not getting any younger either, so getting somebody in there that can kind of get started and start building towards something would probably help a lot. We saw how much Quan helped them last year. That was an acquisition that I thought changed the face of the defense. And, once he went out, I thought it changed it negatively. So getting another athletic player in there that, has sideline speak and probably do a lot of different things, I think would be really good for the defense.
I mean, the linebacker position was kind of where we went after corner as well, Nick. And I'll ask you about Zach Baun. I mean, what are maybe the plans with him? Because, as we know, they were really excited to get him where they got him in last year's draft. But, he's a little different. I guess he's been an edge rusher at times. Can you see him maybe taking over one of the starting linebacker positions?
It's hard for me to see it because I haven't seen anything.
Right.
I mean, they know a lot more than us, so their evaluation is going to be what it is. But I think for us talking about him, it's not a knock on Baun. It's like we saw like 100 and some snaps in his base defense, run defense. Projecting that and playing off the ball in space, covering guys. That's hard. That's hard to do without seeing it. So for me, I'm kind of viewing him as like a wild card, and if it hits, that's great. But like in my evaluations, it's just kind of like he's there, and that sounds really bad, but I just don't know how to view him. So, they say that they like the progress he made and all that stuff, but I got to see it. And until I do, it's just going to kind of be up in the air.
Nick, how do you feel about this receiver position as a whole? Losing Emmanuel Sanders, obviously still got the big dog in Kankar Mike, but, outside, is it Callaway? How is this group shaping up?
Yeah, I think there's some question marks definitely behind Mike Thomas. I do like the fit of a lot of the guys they have better with Jameis Winston or Taysom. I think that they can maybe do a little bit more than they have in the past. Tre'Quan Smith was the best downfield receiver coming out of college that year production-wise. He wasn't able to do a whole lot of that because, Breeze just wasn't throwing those passes. So maybe that gets unlocked a little bit. Deontay Harris,
yes,
I don't think, all respect to Drew Brees. Like, Drew Brees isn't tapping into the things that makes Deontay elite. And I think you can do a little bit more of that. And, they could definitely add somebody else to that position for sure. But, I do think that they have good players there. If they strike out, getting Van Ness, I think, maybe allows you to look at Troutman a little bit more is a receiving threat too, even though he only had 100 yards last year and, does have a lot to prove himself. But, one more guy would I think definitely bolster it, and that'd probably make things a little bit easier on Jameis or Taysom, whoever it happens to be. But, I do think that if they were to go through the draft and not get somebody there, they'd be okay. So, I consider it a need, but it's a little bit lower on my list than, some of the other positions that we already talked about.
It is so wild, and we were talking about it, Nick, before you hopped on, like Mac Jones to the Saints at 28, and we were wondering – is there going to be value there? Do you really want Mac Jones at 28? And now, like San Francisco apparently has moved up to number 3 to select Mac Jones, and that is like the peak of draft season.
Yeah, it is. I don't see it with Mac Jones at 3 is a little bit crazy. Alabama we've talked about this before. Alabama quarterbacks scare me. It's just everything's perfect for him, and it's not going to be perfect for him in the NFL. So, yeah, and that's the thing with this year too. A lot of these, you get opinions on guys, and normally – There's a consensus forming by now, at least within a variance of, 15 picks would seem like a big difference in how people are looking at players. And, you'll talk to one person, they'll have a guy in the 3rd round, and the other person that has him, in the 6th. And it's just what's going on here? And I think it's going to be a really weird draft. And teams with, veteran scouts that have been working their areas for a long time, that have good sources, that can, go beyond, some of the hindrances that COVID created last year. I think they're going to have advantages in drafting. And I think that's going to help a team like the Saints a lot. And, these teams with a lot of continuity in their scouting staffs and just that have been around forever, I think are going to be able to cut through a lot of that. So it's going to be a really weird year. Last year's effects are going to hit this year for the NFL. And, the teams that do draft well, I think, are going to really clean up this year. And, I do feel good for the Saints through that lens because this is a draft where I feel like they need to be better than good to kind of continue on and keep pushing towards the playoffs.
Yeah.
And, maybe things are going to line up for them with this like weird little hidden advantage.
Yeah, it is. It is like we said. I think they got 16 picks over the next 2 drafts. Is that right, Nick?
Sounds right.
If they get the rankings pick, so so that, I mean, that's they at least have a lot of resources to try to manage this bridge period. If it ends up being a bridge period, what about quarterback? We'll end on this one. I don't want to ask about Tamis, but outside of those 2 guys, do they go with another QB? I know it's something we talk about where you're like they have to be open to all options. Do you think they go there in the draft, or do they approach it maybe like a vet in free agency?
Out of those, I would guess maybe a vet in free agency. It doesn't seem like the quarterback's going to fall just with the way everybody's moving up, and then they're going to get stacked early. You mentioned Mac Jones going super early in the draft, so I would predict a veteran maybe shaken free, and we're already starting to see the effects of that coming now. Like Jimmy G, suddenly is going to hit the market. They say they aren't going to trade him, but everybody always says they aren't going to trade their guy until they trade their guy. So I would assume that he's available. New England might be the team that goes after him, but. I think just, some of these opportunities are going to be presented and you're going to be able to, if you want to go get somebody, like if the Jets draft somebody, Sam Darnold's available, right? So like you could go get Sam Darnold if you really like Sam Darnold, or, Garoppolo's going to be out there, or if Carolina gets somebody, now Teddy's out there, and what's your internal evaluation? Did you like Jameis better last year? Or did you like Teddy? And maybe you can go get Teddy. I know they still think a lot of him. I don't know, how that would shake out if they were both available, but it would be interesting to see what that decision would be. But, I do think that Jameis is approaching things the right way. He's talking about trying to become a game manager, which it was not in his DNA before. And I think that was, the biggest knock on him is that he wouldn't take the check down. And it was always trying to show people, how big his arm was and what he could do. And it just wasn't, being smart and not consistently smart all the time. And those poor decisions led to mistakes and interceptions. And, if he cleans that stuff up, like he still has all the talent in the world, but until they see it, I think all doors remain open. And, that veteran opportunity, that situation you might not see now that might shake free, I still think could be the possible door number 3 for him.
Nick Underhill, at Nick_Underhill on Twitter. New Orleans Football is the site. Trust me when I say if you're a Saints fan, you want to sign up, not only to support Nick directly, but you get the best Saints breakdowns on the internet. Nick, thank you so much, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Go to neworleans.football. What Nick's talking about there, it's a Winston quote, right? Where he's like, Breeze taught me, it's not about the results. It's about did we make the correct decision, and then the success will follow. All right, closing out hour number 3 with more Ask the Bench next. Brought to you by Cole Kershaw.